HIV, Human Immunodeficiency Virus by Jordan Case, Adam Curtis, Sydney Heron, and Rebecca Roche. HIV, or human immunodeficiency virus, is an evolutionary master that universally and indirectly kills its host. It accomplishes this by taking over the host's immune system and forcing the host to synthesize additional viruses. Because the immune system is being forced to work for the enemy, the body has no way to defend itself against this microscopic intruder. As the virus infects more cells, the host is unable to mount a sufficient immune response to protect himself from other pathogens. Opportunistic infections often occur, and it is frequently these infections which ultimately kill the host. HIV is a mutation of a virus called SIV, or simian immunodeficiency virus. The virus jumps species from the infected blood of chimpanzees to humans through hunters in Central Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa is the epicenter for HIV, with at least 2/3 of all HIV cases occurring in that region. Surprisingly, extensive war crimes in Africa have dramatically increased the size of the HIV pandemic. Raping enemies and civilians is an effective way to spread a sexually transmitted infection. Outside of Africa, there is still a higher prevalence of HIV among Blacks than in other racial groups. In the US, 49% of those infected with HIV are African American. There are undoubtedly many interactive factors that contribute to this, but many people assume that it is primarily behavioral. However, there are also some physiological reasons that contribute to the uneven demographic spread. HIV-resistant mutant alleles for specific genes offers protection against the virus. CCR5 is an important co-receptor for HIV, and specific mutations to this gene makes it harder for the virus to enter the cell and thus decreases the likelihood of infection. A double allele of the mutated CCR5 gene confers protection even with multiple exposures to the virus, while a single allele of the CCR5 gene slows disease progression. CCL3L1 is a ligand that interacts with CCR5. Each mutated copy of the CCL3L1 gene decreases the risk of developing HIV by 4.5 to 10.5%. These genetic mutations are found most often in Caucasians and very rarely in Blacks, possibly contributing to the skewed demographics. There is no cure for HIV, primarily because it has a seemingly impenetrable reservoir, and it is a highly evolving virus. The latent virus resides within human cells, especially those within the central nervous system, lymph nodes, gastrointestinal mucosa, and the genital tract. It specifically targets CD4 immune cells known as helper T cells. Early treatment will not eliminate the reservoirs, but it often limits their size. The viral DNA resides within the reservoir host cells, but it is transcriptionally silent. Natural and medical therapies are not effectively able to eradicate the reservoirs due to this silence. Antiretroviral therapy decreases signs and symptoms, but systemic seeding from the reservoirs causes these signs and symptoms to resume within weeks of stopping treatment. Reservoirs that are largely inaccessible create significant research challenges and impedes the development of a cure.
Hi, I'm Jordan, and I'm going to be covering the etiology of HIV. HIV is a retrovirus with 2 strands of positive sense RNA and an isohedral structure. It's protected by an envelope. This thin lipid bilayer is created through viral manipulation of the host cell membranes. Glycoprotein spike-like protrusions cover the envelope. They are used for penetrating the host cell wall. The HIV virus is primarily attracted to CD4 cells, which are also called helper T cells, and is an important aspect of the whole body's immune system. However, they're also affected macrophages. Co-receptors must be present on the helper T cell surface for the virus to enter the cell. Once the virus is inside the caspid, the virus uses a unique enzyme called reverse transcriptase, which allows the RNA to create a single strand of DNA copy of viral genetic code DNA polymerase, then copies the DNA strand and the RNA strand is destroyed. The replication process continues until the host cell dies. This process is not precise but leads to frequent mutations, but it effectively creates a larger number of virons to continue the infiltration. Eventually, infected cells become plentiful enough to suppress the immune system of the host and become susceptible to opportunistic infections ranging from common cold to pneumonia. Some HIV variants through replication are called synthetica. This virus manipulates the host cell to the expression of proteins which attract other cells to the region. This virus can escape detection by the immune system by enticing cell migration. It then creates large mononucleated cells and act as factories for viral replication. This combination of factors creates unique and fatal disease. HIV is alone in its ability to completely take over the host immune system and then use the host's own cells to kill itself. The high death rate among helper T cells combined with the high rate of viral replication has created a significant global threat. HIV system of attack, and along with its latent stage of cellular reservoir, is so effective that there is no cure, and that there are more than 36 million people affected by HIV.
My name is Sydney Sydney Heron. I'm going to discuss HIV transmission as well as prevention. HIV is spread via horizontal transmission, which means it requires direct contact with the body fluids. This usually occurs during sexual intercourse, sharing needles, or mother-child transmission. In the US, the highest risk groups include men who have unprotected anal sex, drug users who share needles, partners of those in high-risk groups, and babies born to mothers infected with HIV. Additional factors that increase the risk of infection include race, co-infection with another sexually transmitted infection, poverty, and multiple sex partners. Each route influences the risk of exposure and infection, as well as the severity of the illness. The most common way of transmitting HIV is through unprotected sexual contact with infected individuals. This is, like I said, the most common form of transmission due to the possibilities of abrasions from penetration. Male to female or male to male transmission is more common than female to male transmission. HIV can be transmitted through oral sexual contact, but it is far more likely during unprotected vaginal or anal intercourse. The second most common form of transmission is needle sharing with infected individuals. This is especially common in IV drug users. HIV can quickly infect a large number of people through behaviors such as needle sharing or syringes. This likelihood increases due to the prevalence of shooting galleries where IV drug users shoot up in large groups. This route has the capacity of decimating drug-injecting populations. For example, in 1 year, the incident rate of HIV among IV drug users in Bangkok increased from 2% to more than 40%. Mother-to-child transmission is especially apparent in populations with high HIV prevalence. This can occur at any point during the pregnancy, delivery, or lactation, but of these, the most vulnerable point in delivery is delivery, and that's when the blood is most likely to mix. HIV is linked with a higher rate of spontaneous abortions and transmission of the virus, but no congenital abnormalities have been associated with it. An infected mother who has not received treatment has a 15 to 40% chance of passing the disease on to her infant. The rate increases if the mother has had previous child who contracted HIV from her early infection when the viral load is high, advanced diseases where the mother's immune system provided limited protection, or comorbidities. Transmission is also more likely if the placental barrier is compromised, and this can happen through trauma or planned medical procedures such as amniocentesis. It's important to address common misconceptions regarding the transmission of HIV since there's a lot of false information and rumors out there. You cannot get HIV from closed mouth kissing. While open mouth kissing increases the potential for contact with infected blood, there's only one recorded case of HIV transmission that may have been caused by this manner. While there is a small quantities of the virus present in saliva, tears, and sweat, there have been 0 recorded cases of HIV being transmitted through this means. Insect biting does not transmit the virus. Insects inject saliva and not blood into the person they're biting. HIV is also specific to humans, so it will not survive inside an insect. Since most HIV is transmitted via sexual contact, it's important to practice safe sex and know each other's HIV status. Abstinence is the only way to completely avoid the risk of HIV transmission via this route. Mutual monogamy is also protective. Consistent use of condoms, both male and female, protect against HIV, but they're not a guarantee. In order to maximize their protection, it's important to use them correctly and consistently. Store condoms in a cool, dry place, and regularly check expiration dates. A fresh condom should be used for each new act of sexual intercourse, including oral sex. Spermicide and oil-based lubricant may weaken the integrity of the condom and decrease its protective value. Consistency is important because one broken condom can have dangerous consequences. HIV status should be openly discussed before the first sexual encounter and throughout the relationship. Multiple partners and partners of infected individuals should be tested for HIV every 6 months. Similarly, abstinence from injected drugs. Drug use is the only way to completely avoid the risk of HIV transmission via this route. If you choose to inject drugs, never use the same needle or syringe as someone else. In an effort to decrease the public threat, many governments have actually implemented programs to provide free clean needles for this purpose. Prevention of HIV is the most effective way to prevent against mother-to-child infection. If the mother has HIV, antiretroviral therapy during pregnancy and early postmortem has been shown to decrease the likelihood of transmission. Treating maternal comorbidities, especially malnutrition and sexually transmitted infections, will also lessen the prevalence.
Although the signs and symptoms for HIV are similar between the genders, there is some variance between men and women. Early symptoms for women include a headache, loss of energy, and night sweats. Men may have a sore throat. As the disease progresses, the infected individuals will become increasingly weak and suffer from joint pain. Early signs of HIV include fever, skin rashes, sores over the body, including the genital region, swollen lymph nodes, decreased immunity, and mucocutaneous infections. For women, they also include yeast infections and changes in the menstrual cycle. For men, it often manifests as flu-like symptoms. Over a period of years, the disease progresses and both genders experience the same signs. Respiratory difficulties result from the decreased immune responses to illness such as pneumonia and tuberculosis. Gastrointestinal distress is frequently seen and may lead to malnutrition. Towards the end of life, the amount of and intensity of signs increases. They are more opportunistic infections and malignancies are common. Neurological signs such as encephalopathy and short-term memory loss may occur. In severe cases, the patient falls into a coma. Neurological symptoms would include fatigue, confusion, inattentiveness, forgetfulness, and apathy. For all, death is the inevitable result. There is no cure for HIV, but there is a constant testing to try and find one. However, there are medications that can help slow the process. Medical therapy is designed to minimize signs and symptoms while slowing disease progression by suppressing viral replication and preventing mutations. The ultimate goal is to increase the patient's lifespan. There are many different types of antiretroviral medications. They are collectively referred to as HAART, and they are more effective when started early on in the infection. HAART, highly active antiretroviral therapy, is a combination of multiple drugs. With the frequent mutations, one antiretroviral drug is unlikely to be effective against them all. This combination has significantly increased survival time and allowed patients to live relatively normal lives. However, it is expensive. A monthly cost of $900 to $1,400 may be prohibitive. There is also decreased compliance due to inconvenience. They may need to take up to 30 pills daily, and they can't all be taken at the same time. Nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, NRTIs, and non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, and NRTIs, inhibit reverse transcriptase and prevent the synthesis of new HIV DNA. Of these, NNRTIs are more effective as they do not require conversion before activation and are very effective. However, they tend to increase the chance of drug interactions and often lead to negative central nervous system side effects. Due to this, NRTIs are used more frequently. AZT is an NRTI. It is the most common antiretroviral used, especially for pregnant women. These drugs cross the blood-brain barrier and allow for more systematic treatment. Protease inhibitors and integrase inhibitors inhibit enzymes that are required for viral maturation and replication. These drugs do not cross the blood-brain barrier, and the potential for viral resistance is high. As a result, these drugs are never used as the sole therapy. Side effects are common and may lead to serious complications. Fusion inhibitors prevent fusion between the virus and helper T target host cells. They are considered safe for children and are always used in combination with other antiretrovirals. CCR5 antagonists are most effective when given close to the initial infection, since they prevent the virus from gaining entrance to the cell. In addition, antiretroviral pharmaceutical therapy exists to increase the effectiveness of HAART, boost the immune system, and help decrease symptoms. Vaccines are being researched, some of which focus on antibodies and some on killer T cells. This area does not look promising, though. A trial in 2007 was stopped because 27 participants contracted HIV from the study. This chart illustrates both the ineffectivity of HIV and the effect antiretrovirals had on decreased prevalence. The numbers vary widely, but the clear trend is that deaths dropped dramatically and the rate of those living with infection skyrocketed. 1995, the year antiretrovirals were first used on a large scale, began a trend that has completely altered the HIV prognosis. HIV is very effective, and it has a very high rate of ineffectivity, frequently mutates, has hidden reservoirs that are unable to target, and forces the immune system to work against its own host. Given these characteristics, education and prevention is undoubtedly the most effective way to decrease the number of people with this fatal virus.